Hi, it's Murray. I've had a few wee extra thoughts about the video I posted recently, partial capo, the truth, now called partial capo, the truth, part 1, because this is part 2. You should definitely watch part 1 if you haven't before watching this. I know my take on using a partial capo is a wee bit different from most of the stuff you find on the internet. I'll try and clarify everything in this video, plus give you a few more ideas. I mean, if you start looking at at any capo as a movable nut, of course you're going to find yourself playing the fingering of one key, and because any capo raises the pitch of the instrument, it's going to come out as a different key. But this is not actually a problem. So I'm just going to run through a few other applications for the device that I didn't mention in part 1 and try and clarify once and for all the issue of knowing where you are on the fretboard. Now the obvious next stage is to start using two capos at once, which always kind of shocks people who see you doing it, so maybe that's a good enough reason for doing it in the first place. So yeah, if you want to know what key you're actually in at this point, you're actually in G. How do you work that one out? Well, it's the same as the note in your bottom string. So E, F, F sharp, G, you're in G. And then your root note, your G note's actually, well, G's there. Or if you, like me, you're thinking about playing D shapes, A, B, C, D, and D, there's your root note there. And obviously, you want to change actual key to suit your voice or somebody you're playing with, you do something like that. I mean, for example, that's me taking it up to A in the way it sounds. There's your root note A. You go even higher, but you start running out of neck, so it becomes a bit difficult. But that's the simple principle of being able to play in not all perhaps, but a few different keys just by moving this pair of contraptions up. Other fun stuff I came across was when I was looking for different keys I could apply the partial capo to. I came across the idea of playing in A minor voicings. So here an A minor chord, not a problem at all. Actual fact, because of this cut or reduced capo, this partial capo, you get that second string, which in relative terms is an open A. So you get this wonderful, powerful A chord, which is actually neither a major or minor. You still play the minor. If you want to play that full A minor chord, you're going to want to complete the capo. It's not too hard to make it in real to the top note of the A chord in relative terms, E. Now, a few sort of riff ideas in A minor. And you'll see that works really well, and it's exploiting that open string, which is the point. You can't just put these partial capos anywhere and hope for the best. You've got to understand that you're revealing potential open strings that are just going to keep on singing. So when I do something like that, it's a G9, Same note as playing with your finger on the G string, but you can play it like that, you know, and it sounds rather nice. Now, we've been so far talking about partial capos as these devices that, you know, hold down 3 strings alone. But there's another kind of partial capo that holds down all the strings except the bottom one. And that's a trick you can actually do just with an ordinary shub capo. You just put it across the neck where you want it, you know, and clamp it down and leave your bottom string open. And that actually works. Some guitar necks better than others, but you know, I did that for years. And then decided to invest a modest sum of money in a sort of dedicated drop D capo from Shub. Just got the cheap brass one, it works great. So what happens if I put the drop D partial capo up there on the 7th fret? Well, if I capo anywhere, normally it's a full capo on the 7th fret and I play A minor shapes, it will end up sounding like E minor. Now, following the principle of using useful exposed strings, if I play that A minor, I've now got access to an actual low E. So, it sounds like I'm suddenly entering with another instrument, a double bass or something. But of course, because the partial capo may expose that useful note on an open string, you've not actually done any retuning. So if you were to play a G chord, you're fretting it, so it's just the same as it always was. So let me just play a few wee riffs to give you a feel for that effect. You might notice a bit of a drawback there. You're running out of neck for a start. So here's a thought. Now, if you think this is really weird, well, I don't think it's that weird. What happens if I decide I'm going to play in D minor shapes? So capo on the 4th fret, you know, A minor, B minor, C minor, D minor. You're in D minor. But there's not much point in having an exposed low E, is there? You want a D. So I've just tuned to drop D, like for real. In other words, I've dropped the pitch of that bottom string, which, you know, the tuner tells me is E, and I've dropped it down to D. So if I'm playing A minor shapes, and that chord comes out as a D minor, oh wow, then we've got this incredible low note. Does that not make playing other stuff difficult? Well no, if you're used to drop D anyway, you realize you can't play a G like that, you have to play something like that. So you just play it like that. So if I go back and forward in A minor and G, go to F. E minor is interesting because we've actually used drop D, you wrap your thumb around, which is easier than, you know, having to go with the capo to sort of complete the chord. You can just bring your thumb around and get that power chord that you get over the bottom 3 strings because you've dropped D for real. So let me give you a few riffs in that. So just to remind you, that's playing A minor shapes, capoed up 5 frets, A minor becomes D minor, and I provided myself with a really low note, which you'll notice is the same as your 5th string now. Because that A, then the 5th string has become a D. If you don't believe me, put your tuner in your guitar, or tell you the notes you're dealing with. So let's try this. There's so much to explore with that, and yeah, have a go with that one. And anything else you can come up with. Just remember that basic principle when you use a partial capo, whether it's when it covers 3 strings or or 5 strings, the fundamental point, if you follow my thinking on this, is that you're revealing or exposing open strings. And if you can play these open strings in the middle of your piece, they're great because they keep on ringing until you finally have to play another note on them and fret them. So you get people talk a lot about harp guitar sounds, where you get this lovely sustain, these pedal tones throughout the music, and that's the way to do it if you've got open strings that you can bring into the music. So if you're using any kind of partial capo and you're exposing strings that can be played open, just make sure that they're notes that are useful to you. There's no point in exposing a note that's not part of the tune. Work it out. What notes are useful to you? Refer back to the scale you're playing in. I keep going on about this. I know it sounds like music theory, but it's a very basic bit of music theory. What are the actual 7 notes that you're allowed to play in that piece of music before you start throwing in accidentals or incidentals or intentionally wrong notes? Have fun exploring. So what would I do if I was using partial capo in that rather folky way that exploits all the open ringing strings, and I found myself in another part of the same song having to play, let's call it lead guitar, which is all to do with, knowing where all the notes are on the fretboard, because you've got full knowledge of the fretboard, haven't you? Of course. What do? That's a situation I've found myself in quite often. It's quite simple, really. When I'm doing the kind of open string ringing, I suppose dadgad inspired thing, I think in terms of the capo being a movable nut. In another part of the song, if I want to, all right, the rest of the band wants me to, shall we say, play lead guitar, I'm not playing open strings anyway, so I'm, at least halfway up the neck, and I'm playing strings, thinking about the notes being what they always were. So in a way, that's like 2 kind of mindsets. When you're doing the open string thing, the kind of dadgad inspired thing, you're thinking of the capo as the nut, and then when you're playing lead guitar, you're just ignoring the capo altogether. Think about it like, I guess, that Jimmy Page thing with the double neck guitar. You've got one neck of the guitar set up to play, open ringing chords, and the other neck of the guitar not. And you've got to switch from, if you like, one way of thinking to another. When I got my first guitar, like back at the end of the last ice age, it came with books full of chord shapes, and I thought I had to learn all these complicated shapes and patterns. I could never really be bothered learning all that stuff. It just seemed a bit irrelevant. Same went for scales. Scales were expressed as patterns, and you're supposed to learn all these patterns. Never any mention of notes. So I soon learned that guitar players will go to almost any lengths to avoid learning the names of the notes. They'll try anything, any weird system to kind of avoid learning that basic thing. And I suppose it might be all to do with that rebellion back in the early 60s where young guys started playing guitars and rebelled against the music theories of older people, because that was all to do with reading sheet music and knowing the names and notes and all that kind of stuff. So maybe this refusal to learn music theory is a kind of hangover from that rebellion. But oh dear, look at the pickle it's got us in. Totally playing by ear is just great if you're a gifted musician, like Bert Jansch or Eric Clapton. But I know that when they reach more mature years, both of these guys had actually picked up quite a lot of music theory just along the way on a need-to-know basis. I guess I'm like that as well. I've picked some things up, and I now feel I need to know the names of the notes that I can actually play any one time. I need to know the scale I'm dealing with. At the end of the day, when I'm playing guitar, I think of voicings rather than key. And just remember that pitch is actually arbitrary anyway. Now, the present system we're using is based on the note A above middle C being 440 hertz. Now that's not carved in stone. Different orchestras at different times in history, and indeed in different parts of the world right now, will, for a variety of reasons, use different concert pitches. It's entirely arbitrary. So don't get hung up on pitch as being some kind of problem if you're using a capo of any kind, because obviously shortening the playable string length is going to raise the pitch. It really doesn't matter. If you're playing by yourself, it absolutely doesn't matter. If you're playing with at least one other person, you just have to make sure that you're playing in the same pitch at the same time. Back in the day, after the last ice age, and I'm talking about the late 60s, early 70s, somebody in the band would say, "Give us an A," and somebody in the band would play the fifth string of his guitar, and we'd all go, "Oh, right," we'd all tuned to that. So I hope this has been useful to you. I'm an old hippie. It just makes me glad if I feel I'm offering something that might be of some help to somebody else. Don't forget to like and subscribe, that'd be great.